Hi guys and welcome. In today's video, we are going to understand the operations for the vBond high availability. We are going to capture packets to understand what happens when a VH comes up. So as you can see, we have our controllers, vBond 1, manage, and then vSmart, all in one data center. Then we also have the other controllers, which is the vBond 2 and then the vSmart 1 in a different data center. And as we have our tier 2 ISPs, MPLS core network over here. And then we have three of our VHs up, and then we have three of them down. So I'm going to power on one of the VHs, capture the packets, then we see how the operations work. So before that, I want us to check our DNS server. So checking the configuration of our DNS server, show run. So this is our DNS server. So we created a host name for our DNS server entries. So we have vBond 1 and then vBond 2. And then we are mapping them to this domain name. Okay. And then we've created our own domain name on the DNS server. So basically, I'm just using a Cisco switch to act as a DNS server. So I create my domain name, then I create the A records, the entries for the DNS, which is the IP addresses for my two vBond controllers. Now, the reason why we are using the domain name is that if in the configuration for vManage, if we are to only define, let's say, the DNS server for our devices, we cannot configure two IP addresses for the DNS server entry. So the best way to configure high availability is using the DNS domain name, or let's say the domain name to query it. So let's say show run system. So as you can see over here, this is the VH. So if you check the vBond, we specify the domain name. So basically what it means is that instead of us specifying one particular IP address, we give it a domain name. And now this, once the VH comes up, it's going to query our DNS server. So there's a configuration for our DNS server, which is the vBond. So we need to check our DNS entry. So show run. There's a configuration for our DNS server. So if you go to VPN 0, as you can see over here, you can see that I specified 10.0.0.5 as our DNS server. So once the VH comes up, it's going to send a query to this DNS server to resolve this name for the vBond, and we are going to get two entries for the vBonds because when you go to the DNS server, we have two entries for this particular domain. So just to confirm the IP address on my DNS server, so this is my DNS server over here with this IP address, and once again, we can reach it through the MPLS, and the tier 2 ISP is doing all the routing for us, so we can reach our DNS server in our data center. All we have to do is to be configuring default routes pointing to our MPLS, or let's say our upstream provider, which is the tier 2, and it's going to do the routing for us. So without wasting much time, I'm going to put a capture here and then spin up one of the V edges. So as we speak for now, so let me skip this version. I'm going to power on my VH1, and once it's been powered on, we're going to get a lot of entries in our Wireshack. So let's give it some time. It's now booting, so let's give it some time. Normally, the whole boot process and the DNS query takes like roughly 2 minutes or less. So let's just give it some time for it to boot. So I'm going to pause the video and then I'll continue when the packets start to load. So at this point, as you can see, let me increase the size. So you can see the DNS queries and the DTLS tunnel. So let me stop it because at this point, once I see DTLS, I know that the vBond um, query, the query for the vBond domain is up. Then we've been able to resolve the entries for the vBond, and then we've been able to communicate with the other controllers as well. So let me just go up, and then starting from here, once you start seeing this packet, you know that the device is coming up. So as you can see, it's sending a broadcast. So this is the VH1, which is the 1.2, checking to see if there's anybody within that subnet using that particular IP. And if it's not, it's going to go ahead and communicate with its gateway. And as you can see, it has been able to communicate with its gateway. So it has resolved the gateway over here. Now, the next thing we should focus on is the DNS. So let me just query for this one. Select apply as filter selected. So this is what I was talking about. So the first thing it does is that when it comes up, it's going to, once we have our DNS server configured, it's going to send a DNS query to the DNS server, which is the 10.0.0.5, and this is the 20.0.1.2 coming from the VH1. And as you can see, if you check the queries, it's sending the domain name, right? So this is the first DNS query, and the next one is a query for IPv6. We're not going to focus on that. So let's focus on the entry for the area host. And if you check the response, so you realize that when I click on this, so this is the query and this is the response from the DNS server. That's why you can see that icon next to the packet number 34. If I click on 34, it's the same thing. So you can check from here. So previously we sent a query to the DNS server for this particular domain, or let's say domain name, which is the vbond.devnetengineering.org. And then in our response from the DNS server, as you can see, the source is the DNS server and the destination is the VH. So if you check the answers we were given to IP address, so the DNS server is telling us that there are two entries for the DNS domain name that it queried, and it will give out all these entries to the vBond, or let's say the VH. So as you can see, we have two entries over here. So we have 20.0.0.2, 10.0.0.1. So we can go ahead and then open our VH, and then let's check the control connections. So show control connections. And as you can see, we can see 2002, which is vBond 2. So this is 2002 over here. That is the IP on that vBond. And this is 10.0.0.2. Now, just to confirm that you realize that these are the entries. So we have 20.0.0.2 and then 10.0.0.2. Now, let's try to simulate a link down for the primary vBond. So I'm just going to go ahead and shut this vBond down. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have shut the. So let me just stop it. So let me just power it on again. Let me pause the video and then I'll resume when I power on the devices. Okay, so I'm back online. So I'm going to go ahead and simulate a link down. So I'm going to carefully select vBond 2. I'm going to shut it down. So I've shut the vBond 2 down. So it can be anything in real networking scenarios. It can be connectivity to the site is down or anything. So let's go ahead and see how the vSmart intelligently switches to the backup vBond. And the thing is that the operations for the operations between the vSmart and the vBond is that it's going to send continuous pings after it establishes connection to the vBonds. To be sending continuous probes to these vBonds to make sure that they are alive. So if one goes down, the backup will take over. So now as you can see, currently we don't have the backup connected, so it will take some time for the control connection to come up. And as you can see, we have the control connection over here. So it's just sending probes, and then once it detects that the primary vBond is down, it's just going to go ahead and switch to the backup. So let's see what happens if connectivity is restored. So I'm going to power on the vBond. I'm going to pause the video and come back when the vBond 2 or the primary vBond is up. So let's check to see if we have active on the, so let me just capture the packet just for you to see what is going on, so that we can confirm continuous pings to the, so I'll search for IPMC, sorry, ICNP. So as you can see, it's sending continuous pings to the DNS. You see, so it sends continuous pings to all the DNS, as you can see over here. So it's sending continuous pings to all the DNS servers, 20.0.0.2, 10.0.0.2. And then once it responds, it's going to switch over. So let's see. So, okay, so the current active one will be active. So let's say we have vBond 2 going down, which is the primary, and then the vBond 1 going down. So it's acting in an active state, because if it was to be active standby, and then let's say the vBond 2 had priority, it was going to take over the DNS, also the vBond, the active vBond. And then since we are just querying the domain name from the vEdges, it's just going to connect to the next available entry for the DNS server, and then we are going to get one, since we are having vBond 2 to be down, we are going to be using this one. So if you are to shut this one down, obviously traffic will fail over to vBond 2. So thank you for watching this video, and see you in my next video.